I'm Dylan, the CEO and one of the co-founders of Baseten. I'm here with Sarah Guo today. So can you just give a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, your background a bit?
Sure. I'm Sarah Guo. I am an investor in Baseten from, I guess, very early on. I was an investor at another venture platform for about a decade, and then started a AI-focused venture fund about 2 years ago now.
Awesome. You are a first investor in 2019, and you're invested in every round since. Can you just talk a bit about what you saw back then, or what the thesis was in that world, in the old world? That's
Well, I feel like I have to tell the story of I first met you and
on the 14, yeah.
Phil in 2014 with a different company.
Yeah.
We were like fresh off the boat from
Yeah.
Australia, and I remember the feedback being something like, "Love these guys, not sure about the area." And so it was a very easy decision for me to say yes when, very shortly after selling that company, you're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I think we have something better."
Yeah.
And it came from like real personal pain of trying to ship machine learning applications, and finding that was like a lot harder than it appeared from the outside. And so I think like one thing that I'd seen within a bunch of different companies of scale within our own portfolio, especially, the consumer companies were kind of the vanguard, was that machine learning could completely change the economics of your business,
Yep.
even before the, more recent algorithmic and scaling advancements. And so it just seems like wanted to work with you guys and Amir and the rest of the team. And then it seemed like an incredibly simple thesis of it's too hard to ship ML applications.
Yeah.
And if we make it easier, people do more of it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think you're really quick to get onto it. I think you committed in a couple of days, or one day, maybe even on the spot, maybe.
It was quite simple.
This is
I said,
the
how do we do this?
how we did it. Yeah, we started planning it out. Awesome. And then kind of looking back, this is even goes beyond just Baseten from 2019 to 2025. It's been 5.5 years now. What are like the big moments from your perspective, either through an investor or just an investor in Baseten specifically, that's jump out as you as like, oh, that's interesting. This could be something really big here.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start with the macro and then go to the company. I think, we both felt that it was inevitable that companies would want to do more machine learning.
Yeah.
There was actually, if you remember, like a very big question on like how fast.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think anybody has that question now.
Yeah.
And if you think about like sort of different trigger points, one was certainly like GPT 3.5 and ChatGPT is a moment that commanded a lot of attention to the power of scaling transformers and instruction following for models. I think another, and it's hard to like pick a particular moment in time, and there are many, but was just be like increasingly powerful open source models being available and the experimentation that happened in that. And I think like if I just characterize like the two biggest things that have happened in the ecosystem, I'd say like, well, people realize that you can do incredible things with transformers and diffusion models, and are continuing to experiment with like more architectures now around reasoning. And the second being like you have for a while, there's this narrative of like, there will only be a few labs that have these capabilities.
Yep.
And that's turned into this really rich ecosystem of open source. If I think about what that's meant for the company, and obviously you have your parallel journey of like figuring out exactly what you want to build. But if you remember, early on, you drew this diagram of like what it takes and all the multiple teams to ship a machine learning application to production. And I forget what point this was, but at some point when you guys like shipped a first platform, started engaging with customers, you pointed out, you're like, people get really stuck on this serving thing. It actually seems very hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think like focusing on inference as a starting point around this larger problem was a big deal. And then seeing, I think the just general takeoff of the application layer over the last 2 years and what that's meant for the growth of the company has been really magical.
Yeah, amazing. That makes sense. It's also interesting thinking a bit more about, this is my own commentary here, kind of the use cases as well. Like I remember when we used to go talk to customers early on and you were part of these conversations, it was kind of this evolution, right? First it was like we'd go and talk to data teams.
Mhm.
And that was kind of like a I think that was just like an accident of time that the data team was like the holders of the keys to the machine learning castle.
Yeah.
And then we went to like early AI innovation labs and enterprises, and we were like, hey, what's exciting to you? And
Yeah, of course I remember this.
and
Yeah.
I think there was one customer who was just like, I don't know, Bert. um, and then now it's just like how it's more just like how quick as opposed to what shape
Yeah.
does this take? And I think that doesn't seem like that's slowing down.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think even I think like 2025 is the year of enterprise adoption for AI. I think on the application side, on like people's own proprietary and fine-tuned models. But there was a big transition where it really went from like experimental, like we should do this because we have the data,
yeah,
to the use cases in the enterprise being I'm going to buy from, this group of new vendors that are offering these automation or creative solutions that are like Baseten
yeah,
customers, the application layer. Or, hey, we really have a use case that we think like we know how to attack.
yeah,
And so we just need to do it as fast as possible.
yeah,
And so, even talking to a bunch of the go-to-market leaders for the research labs, like that's been a big shift this past year.
yeah. Amazing. And then I think that kind of parlays well into the next question, which is what's exciting you about the next 12 months. And it feels like every time we make a guess for the next 3 months we're wrong. But what are you seeing from your perspective? Either about AI or inference as a whole, and yeah,
Yeah. I think that it would be really hard to make any sort of claim that you're not going to see exponential growth in inference from now.
yeah,
Right. And there's a like let's talk about the different like inputs or why I'm like so confident
yeah,
on that. I know you guys more visibility into the numbers and even more confidence, but part of it is like the architectural
yeah,
shift, right? I think the move to the idea of test time scaling or getting better answers and better outputs by spending more on compute from models versus trying to do all of that work at training and in more compound AI systems like that. I think that super exciting for anybody in the inference space because it makes the problem harder, more complex, and more important.
yeah,
So I think that's the sort of first thing. And then the second thing is just like there are applications that are really working,
yeah,
right? And so if you look at Harvey, Abridge, Sierra, Cursor, like there's a number of companies that have had breakout growth from a user and a revenue perspective, some of them based 10 customers. And I think like that's the thing I still fundamentally pay a lot of
yeah,
attention to, right? You can have the technical thesis, but it doesn't mean anything unless, end users like see value. And I think we're going to have a wealth of those applications this year.
yeah. That makes sense. I think to state that how I think about it, which is it's kind of three things that are driving inference demand. One is like the very macro, which is like closed source and open source converging, seeing that with DeepSeek, and we're seeing that with demand ourselves. The second one is the reasoning models and the scaling of Tesla compute, which you said. And the third one is the agentic apps, which at the end of the day, we call out what it is, but it just means more inference.
Mhm.
When you tie that all together, like it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down. Uh,
I think one of the things that would be interesting for you to talk about is also just like the increasing sophistication of customers
yeah,
in every segment, right?
yeah,
Because I think there was this point of view. Maybe I'll separate this into 2 points, actually. There's a point of view that the only thing that mattered was sort of like maximum quality of
yeah,
outputs in a single shot for a little while. And I think that view is like clearly irrelevant as people, as you said, move to agentic systems and reasoning systems. Like if I'm going to make 500 calls at a time, it actually matters a great deal to me, like how fast it
yeah,
is and how efficient it is. And so the expectation of what inference providers is going to do for you has just become a lot more
yeah.
important. And so I know some of your customers have really like pushed the bounds to unreasonable levels with you guys.
Yeah, totally. That's a good point. So, for us, it's that, for a long time, um, it was quality of output is everything. And, anything except the frontier was commodity. That was, and I think what's happened now is that, yeah, that's become increasingly, like, you can get quality somewhat, pretty easily, and it's only getting better, but you don't need to filter for quality as much as you did, say, 12 months ago. And then when you go from that to next year, you get to the next three things, which are how fast does it run? So that's very important. And you need customization at the model level to be able to tune a model to the needs of your application users. And that's like a big driver for, why people are adopting it. But also the second one is infrastructure. Like I think everyone's realizing that actually one of these models at scale is quite difficult. You don't have to, if you go to the people doing the most inference right now, it's not hard to go to the status pages and be like, oh, there's some pretty smart people working here and having a pretty hard time doing this, and running this at scale is very important. And, downtime at the inference layer just means downtime. For like the fundamental application experience does not work if inference is down. And I think the third thing, which you and I were just talking about this, is, costs, which is like at some point, inference is your cogs. And, you need to do everything you can to drive down that cost. And, ideally that just leads to more inference over time, but at some point it does become very important. I think, they're the big drivers of how companies I think the best companies and the most sophisticated companies at the application layer are thinking about inference. And it seems like as more companies grow, that's where they're gonna fit into.
Yeah, I think like generally we see like a journey of maturity.
Yeah.
Right. Like with any new technology, people need to start by experimenting with the easiest thing. And the easiest thing is going to be shared APIs from like popular large research lab providers. I think depending on the sophistication of the team, the capability, like, and the clarity of their use case, when they move beyond that experimentation phase,
Yeah.
like you end up building like systems of many models in general, and then you start figuring out like what you want to optimize, and that means from both a cost and a quality perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think the natural progression is to having some set or all of your models in dedicated infrastructure. I do think that it's like crazy to me that today end users and companies accept the like slowness and like lack of reliability that we've come to see in many AI applications. And it's just it was just a function of immaturity of the industry right now. I think like if you just think about how you interact generally with business and consumer applications, like people are like, can't be more than 150 milliseconds. It has to be up all the time,
Yeah.
right? We're not there yet, and we will get there. It's just about people investing in that infrastructure over time.
Yeah, totally. And I think we see this with a lot of our customers as well, which is, what the most sophisticated companies and the ones who are honestly like the deepest product thinkers, and building, the most sophisticated products or thinking about the users the most, they care the most
Yeah.
about uptime reliability. Hey, this is not acceptable, or
Yeah.
speed is a performance is probably all these things are necessary but not sufficient. But like performance especially is necessary and not sufficient, and reliability more so, even more so, which is, hey, we just can't go down it's not okay to go down multiple times a day.
Yeah. Well, and now I think one of the things that we see within our portfolio is like you have people buying, in mission critical applications, like real amounts of AI product.
Yeah.
And like it kind of flows through the whole ecosystem, right? Your Fortune 500 enterprise customer with 10,000 seats is like not okay with, like 99% uptime product.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that customer demand and competition is going to drive much better quality and expectation, and quality in the sense of like the way we expect web products to be fast and reliable. And I think that will go throughout the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I think even for customers who are trying to figure out what kind of infrastructure provider they want to work for, it's like, I think all these things aren't, to me, they're not super incremental. It's a little binary whether infrastructure providers see this themselves. Either, we saw an inference provider yesterday with 1.9, which is just not what you want. And I think, customers, I think, need to really invest in that early on, because we know how sticky these things are and how hard they are to rip out. So And I think like front loading as much of some of these decision making is, I think, going to be more and more critical.
I also think that this is overall, it's a market where because so much innovation comes from research labs,
Yeah.
engineering teams very reasonably go look to the
Yeah.
to the research labs in terms of okay, so how should we think about what's worth investing in?
Yeah.
And the research labs have kind of universally decided that model customization, post training,
Yeah.
and scaling inference are good ideas.
Yeah.
And I think the rest of the market will decide that this year too.
Yeah. Amazing. And then just on work, you spend some time talking to enterprises. What are the things that surprised you about how they've gone about, launching AI products? Or have they at all yet? Maybe.
I am pretty surprised by how quickly certain audiences that I would have thought of as more conservative
Yeah.
have decided that they want AI to be an advantage for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so, a few examples, if it is companies like a Bridge or Latent that sell to large healthcare providers, I have looked at startups selling to large healthcare providers for more than a decade.
Yeah.
It's not generally a rapidly adopting set of customers. It's not because these people are not smart business executives. I think my conclusion is actually
The
the healthcare IT technology innovation hasn't been that good
good. Yeah.
from the startup ecosystem for a decade. It just wasn't worth buying
Yeah.
at any
I
speed.
agree. Yeah.
And that's so sad to think about, but is great that now there are things that people really want. And so I'm actually incredibly bullish based on the numbers that we should see better outcomes and more efficiency in healthcare pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Then another example I would give you, and I'd ask if what surprises you, since you guys have this big customer base of these companies, is security is also a industry that's been I don't know, I love the security community. I've been a security investor for a long time. They're kind of ornery,
Yeah.
right? Their job is to be suspicious. You're in the risk management role, but in security, like many industries, they face a talent issue.
Yeah.
They're not trying to replace people in their organizations. They cannot hire people with the capabilities they want. And so when companies like Culminate are suggesting that and proving in production environments there are agentic systems that can do investigation for you. I'm shocked that security leaders are yes, we will definitely try that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's, I can echo that back. I think my conclusion of the healthcare stuff is that, hey, these are actually very rational buyers,
Yeah.
and the ROI just wasn't there. And when the ROI became clear, they did it. Also, it was the reason why, because if you think about what software the healthcare industry adopted at the application layer in the last 20 years, there hasn't been much. It's like, hey, it's Epic or bust or Sonar or bust. Seeing how they're adopting some of these new technology, it's like, oh, well, actually, maybe we were skeptical of them for the wrong decision, and the software wasn't good. And I think it's the same thing with security, which is, again, anything with this tedium, and you just need to be incredibly detail oriented. I think there's actually a massive place for AI to play, a massive role for AI to play. And yeah, I think we're seeing the same in weird places like healthcare, security, insurance. Even there's a lot of insurance companies, again, financial services. Again, financial services is always pretty hard to look at because they're so cagey about their way they use AI. But what we're seeing is that these hedge funds that are actually historically very, very rational are adopting LLMs and other forms of AI at increasingly aggressive rates, just because the value is so clear.
I think another domain that I've just it's nice to have a hunch and then way better to see the data is I really think of AI as a democratizing technology.
Yeah.
Right. You're giving a lot of people new skills, and you guys have a bunch of code generation customers and creative customers. More people want to be able to generate media of any type and generate applications than can do it today. Right. A 0.1%. Less than 0.1% of the world can really build any software. There's more demand than that. And so I think it's exciting because the way to look at the opportunity tends to be the way I look at the opportunity is not like what markets have already existed.
Yeah.
It's really like very technology driven. And what do you believe people want to be able to do? And they want to be able to do a lot.
Yeah, no, totally. I think a year ago, I would have told you that, hey, we're like 99.9% of the use cases haven't come online yet. I still actually believe that, and I think it's just like, and that actually might be, even though there's been a ton of adoption in the last 12 months, and I think that's just because like what is possible
Yeah.
is kind of just blowing us away,
Yeah.
to some degree.
Also, just thinking about like big companies in your own customer base, like the experimentation with the different UX paradigms. Like I'm pretty sure that we're going to see a lot more interesting voice applications this year.
Totally.
And like that's seen explosive growth too.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Yeah.
Happy to be on the journey.